We're joined now on the phone by Husker Online, Sean Callahan. Sean, good morning. Last night, Matt Rule was on the radio. He talked very highly of Tony White and said he did talk to the AD at UCLA about Tony White and was very complimentary. I'm curious, Sean, if Tony White has a good year again, do we thinking he is going to be a head coach somewhere in 2 years?
Well, all the jobs that kind of made sense, a lot of them opened up for him this year. He previously had left Syracuse. That opened up this offseason. He played at UCLA. He's going to make $1.6 million. They have a very good group of players returning on this defense next season. I think the opportunity will be there. But again, you just never know what the opportunities are going to be. That's the challenge when you're a coach. You just don't know where the profession is going to take you.
No Husker players were invited to the NFL Combine. This year, there were 321 initial invites. Which player, in your mind, is the most surprising that didn't get invited for the best?
Luke Reimer, just with his body of work, you look at Luke Reimer. He's one of the all-time leading tacklers in Nebraska football history. He did have some injury issues over his career, but he was a very good linebacker at the collegiate ranks. And I think it's a reminder of how hard it is to make the combine. There's roughly 258 players drafted, and I believe it was 321 that got invited yesterday. So not even everybody that gets invited to the combine is a guaranteed draft pick. Luke Reimer's got to be right up there. Omar Brown, you could make an argument that he's got a chance. He had a very good week in the Shrine Bowl with how he played out there. But I would put Reimer, and then Quentin Newsome. We talked about this yesterday, Sip. His body of work as a multi-year starter. All three of those guys, I think, still have a chance, to get into the next level, whether that's as a free agent or a late round draft pick. But that pro day, I believe it's March 21st now, all of a sudden becomes very, very important for those guys.
So by Sean Callahan. Sean, we heard from Glenn Thomas, the new QB coach and co-OC on Monday. What were your first impressions of what you heard from Glenn Thomas on Monday?
I think very much a stay-in-line type hire. I don't look at Glenn Thomas as Scott Frost bringing in Mark Whipple, a guy that's coming in to shake everything up.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that kind of is right in line with Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield and kind of what they want to do. And they've made no bones about it. Marcus Satterfield remains the play caller, remains the primary offensive coordinator. I think Glenn Thomas got the co-tag. Part of it was to leave Pittsburgh. To make it financially right for what it was going to take to get him here. I'm sure having the opportunity to coach a guy like Dylan Raiola helps sell the position as well to Glenn Thomas. And this is what Matt Rule, as you guys have probably talked about, ultimately tried to do a year ago. He wanted to bring in more of a quarterback specialist coach, the people that he wanted. It just, the timing wasn't right to get him to Nebraska, or the opportunity wasn't right. And a year later now, they did a shuffle, and Thomas will coach the quarterback. Satterfield will remain the guy, but move to that tight ends room. And then Josh Martin will still be in the program back in his analyst role. So it was a shuffle in some sorts, but I don't look at it as like it's going to really be a drastic move, say like Scott Frost when he brought in Mark Whipple.
Sean, FanDuel set the over-unders for teams. In the Big Ten, I assume other conferences too. They set Nebraska's over-under number at 7.5, along with USC 7.5, Iowa 7.5. Who else is 7.5? Well, Maryland 7.5. Higher than a lot of teams, higher than maybe some people would have expected. What do you think of the 7.5 over-under number that FanDuel put out?
Well, I think on the surface you're like, whoa. But then you look at the schedule for Nebraska, and we said this last year, and this is before we knew the 24 schedule. They may never get a schedule like this again. Well, they got another one like it again. And I say that in the context of, their first 7 games, they're not going to play a team that recruits higher rank recruiting classes than them. In terms of 4-star plus type players. Colorado is a transfer built program, so they're a little different. But they have Purdue, who lost one of their best players in the transfer portal and had a rough first year. Illinois, they beat a year ago. That game's in Lincoln. Indiana has a first-year head coach. I mean, honestly, of their first 7, Rutgers could be as tough as any, and that game's in Lincoln, moving forward. So they have a very good first 7, and we know the back 5 is going to be difficult, but UCLA now on the back 5, all of a sudden looks a lot more manageable. It's a November game in Lincoln with a rookie head coach, with a lot of things that have happened out there in Westwood. They lost their quarterback to Oregon. We don't know anything about USC, but what I like about that game on paper early is it's a late November game in LA. You're not going to be restricted with your playbook more than likely, where a lot of late November games, go back to the 2021 Wisconsin game, how windy and cold, the 2022 Wisconsin-Nebraska game, how windy and cold that was. You have to completely change what you do. Well, that's a great game for Nebraska and a young quarterback that wants to throw it going out to LA in late November, because you're probably not going to have to really change much of what you do versus a game late in the year when you play Wisconsin or Iowa, where it could be really cold and windy, and it kind of limits your passing and maybe even your special teams play.
Joined by Sean Callahan. Sean, we just talked about last segment, unfortunate news in the softball world. Jordy Ball, Nebraska's star transfer, last 2.1 innings, hurts the ACL, out for the season. Have you ever seen a bigger gut punch this quickly at Nebraska before?
Yeah, I mean, we've lived through a few in football over the years, but this one, you think about what she's done for Nebraska and the sport here. Over 3,000 season tickets were sold. That venue, they've had to add extra seats, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how the look of that changes, if at all. I mean, Nebraska fans don't ever underestimate; they'll still show up there. But it was set up to be a special year where they'd win the Big Ten, where they'd possibly have a chance to host a regional. And, they lost their All-American on the first game of the year. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's devastating. I guess the optimist in me is like, hey, it happened early, first game, show redshirt. So Jordy Ball's still going to get 2 years at Nebraska. So, I mean, I think that is, if you're trying to be a positive take out of this, you get her for 2 more years still. It's unfortunate you lose her this year, but thankfully she didn't lose the year of eligibility because of the injury and when it happened.
Sean, always good stuff. Thanks for the time. We'll chat with you again next week.
Happy Valentine's Day, boys. I hope you guys took care of the ladies.
Oh, yeah, we'll take care of them.
Always, Sean. What about that? Husker Online, Sean Callahan.